Hello all, my name is Krishnamurthy Pammi. I welcome you to the session on rational decision making under risk. As part of this session, we will learn guidelines for making rational decisions. We will first understand decision makers' attitude towards risk. We will then refer an example and we will compare two investments. As part of this, we will apply simple mathematical equations and try to see their relevance towards decision making. We will then understand decision tree analysis, where a sequence of events can unleash from a choice of the decision taken. So, we will try to take another example and try to see how to conduct decision tree analysis. We will understand the importance of subjective assessment while decision making through Coco-Cola case study. Decision makers' attitude towards risk. People can be categorized into three categories: risk seekers, risk averters, and risk neutrals. Risk seeker is one who prefers risk given a choice between more or less risky investments. With identical expected money returns, he will select the riskier investment. Risk averter is one who, faced with the same situation, will select the less risky investment. Risk neutral person is one who, faced with the same situation, will be indifferent to the choice. For him, any investment is equally preferable to the other. You would perhaps have observed both risk averse and risk seeking behavior in the real world. The analysis of risk is based largely on the concept of probability and probability distribution that are commonly encountered in the elementary statistics. First, the terms strategy, state of nature, and outcome need to be defined. A strategy is one of the many alternative plans or courses of action that could be implemented in order to achieve managerial goal. A manager might be considering three strategies to increase profits. 1. Build a more modern plant which may produce at low cost. Implement a new marketing program to increase sales. Change the design of the product to decrease cost and increase sales. So, out of the alternatives available, the manager has to take a strategy. That means he has to choose a course of action in order to achieve the goal. So, strategy is out of the alternative options or plans available, what is the best alternative a manager chooses to achieve a manager's goal. A state of nature is a condition that may exist in the future and that will have a significant effect on the success of a strategy. For example, the manager may not be aware of economic conditions in the future. The possible states of nature may be normal, recession, or boom. So depending upon the kind of state of nature, that is normal, recession, or boom, it will have an effect on the outcome. Now, the third point is outcomes. The outcome results in either gain or loss based on a particular combination of strategy and state of nature. The decision maker has no control over the states of nature that will prevail in future, but the future states of nature will certainly affect the outcome of any strategy that he or she may adopt. The particular decision made will depend, therefore, on the decision maker's knowledge or estimation of how a particular future state of nature will affect the outcome of each particular strategy. So, a manager needs to understand the strategy, state of nature, and outcome. So, these three terms are very critical. There are three elementary statistics one should know while taking business decisions. First one is expected value or mean. We call it as mu. The expected value mu is an estimate of expected return for the investment. Given set of outcomes, let's say xi, and the probability of each occurring pi, three statistics relating to the probability distributions can be used. These statistics have a direct application in measuring the expected return and risk associated with any business decision, for which a set of outcomes and their probabilities have been determined. The expected value, standard deviation, and the coefficient are often referred as risk-return evaluation statistics. Standard deviation we measure because risk has been defined in terms of the variability in the outcomes. The standard deviation is a measure of risk associated with the investment. The larger the standard deviation, the greater is the risk. The third one is coefficient of variation. Risk per rupee of expected return is measured by the coefficient of variation. So expected value is something that if you take a decision, what's the kind of expected value I can expect because of this decision. Again, with that decision, what's the standard deviation? The higher the standard deviation, the larger is the risk we are taking. The lesser is the standard deviation. The standard deviation is actually the how much variability spread you have from the mean. Okay. Similarly, the coefficient of variation, it talks about risk per rupee of expected return and is measured by the coefficient of variation. So these three elements can further be elaborated in terms of formulas. They are the expected value or mean is the measure of expected return. This is represented by the equation mu is equal to sigma I equal to 1 to n pi into xi, where pi is a probability and xi is the outcome. The second one, the standard deviation, is a measure of risk. It is represented by sigma is equal to square root of sigma I equal to 1 probability into xi minus mu whole square. So it's basically the standard deviation is a measure of risk. The higher the standard deviation, the greater is the risk we are taking. The coefficient of variation is a measure of risk per unit of money of return. The coefficient of return is measured by the equation sigma by mu, that is standard deviation by the mean or the expected value. We will refer an example and we will compare two investments where we will derive the three elementary mathematics statistics we just now discussed. There are two investments, investment 1 and investment 2. Both investments require an initial cash outlay of 100 rupees and have a life of 5 years. The return on each depends on the rate of inflation over the 5-year period. Okay, so we are actually applying this state of nature, okay, on expected outcome. Okay, of course the inflation rate is not known with certainty, but suppose that the collective judgment of economists is that the probability of no inflation is 20%, the probability of moderate inflation is 50%, and the probability of rapid inflation is 0.3, that is 30%. Okay, the outcomes are defined as the present value of net profits for the next 5 years. So the same is tabulated here. The beauty here is the expected outcome is now having two dimensions. Okay, one is state of nature and its corresponding probability. So on the investment 1, there is 20% probability that no inflation state of nature can prevail. In that situation, the expected outcome is 100. Again, there is a 50% probability that moderate inflation can prevail and the expected outcome is 200. There is 30% probability on investment 1 where rapid inflation can be there, where the expected outcome is 400. Similarly, for investment 2, okay, the expected outcome 150 under no inflation, 20% probability is there, and there is a 50% probability for moderate inflation, and there is 30% probability for rapid inflation, in which case you will get actually the expected outcome is 250. Again, the beauty here is the expected outcome you are actually viewing under different states of nature and its corresponding probability. So for investment 1, let's calculate the expected value or mean or mu. Okay, the way we calculate is the expected outcome into corresponding probability. So the investment 1 is having 3 states of nature: no inflation, moderate inflation and rapid inflation. Okay, so for no inflation, where the probability is 20%, which is 0.2, multiplied by the outcome 100. So 0.2 multiplied by 100 plus 0.5 multiplied by 200 plus 0.3 multiplied by 400. So which actually comes down to 240. So the expected value for the investment 1, where we consider all states of nature and their corresponding probability, it is actually coming to 240. Similarly, the standard deviation is for all the 3 different states of nature, we will take corresponding probability and we will actually take their outcome minus mu, because you know the standard deviation is how much it's basically differing from the average, right? So we wanted to know the spread for each of the state of nature. So the probability 0.2 for no inflation state of nature multiplied by outcome xi 100 minus the average or mean is 240. This mean is actually coming from earlier slide. This is 240. Okay, so 240. So 0.2 into 100 minus 240 whole square plus 0.5 into 200 minus 240 whole square plus 0.3 into 400 minus 240 whole square, which is actually coming to 111.36 if you apply square root on it. Okay, so the quantum of standard deviation, the quantum of the measure of the risk that you are taking is 111.36. Okay, the coefficient of variation, that is mu1, which is mu1 is 240 and standard deviation is 111.36. The coefficient of variation is mu1 by sigma 1, which is 111.36 by 240, which is actually coming to 0.46. So on the similar lines, let's also calculate the expected value for investment 2. So the expected investment 2 options are detailed at the bottom of the table. So for the no inflation state of nature, the probability is 20% and the outcome is 150. So mu2 is equal to 0.2 into 150. So 0.2 into 150 plus 0.5 into 200 plus 0.3 into 250, which actually comes down to 205. So this is what is the mu2, the expected value for the investment 2. Okay, again the measure of risk taken under investment 2 is again 0.2 into 150 minus 205 whole square plus 0.5 into 200 minus 205 whole square plus 0.3 into 250 minus 205 whole square, which actually comes down to, if you apply square root on top of it, it comes to 0.35. So let's also calculate the coefficient of variation, which is mu2 is equal to 205 and sigma 2 is 0.35. So coefficient of variation is 35 by 205, which actually comes down to 0.17. So if you apply investment 1 and investment 2, mu1 is 240, sigma 1 is 101.36 and the coefficient of variation is 0.46. So if you compare it with corresponding terms in investment 2, okay, so the expected return for investment for 1 is 240. It's quite higher because you are actually getting more expected return in case of investment 1 is 204, and whereas you are only getting 205 in investment 2. Sigma 1, the magnitude or the amount of risk you are taking is high in investment 1. This is 111.36, whereas in investment 2 you are actually taking only 0.35. So it's less riskier is investment 2, high riskier is investment 1. Again, risk per dollar of expected returns, which is basically the coefficient of variation, which is 0.46 in investment 1 and 0.17 in investment 2. So I repeat, the expected value is higher in investment 1 and investment 1 is high riskier because your standard deviation is more. Investment 2 is quite safer, means less riskier, and the risk per dollar is 0.46 here. Again, because you are not taking much risk, your money is also the risk per dollar of expected returns is only 0.17 in investment 2. So if you compare these two investments, which investment do you think the stakeholders will take? What is the better choice? We can't just say. An young entrepreneur may well prefer investment 1, whereas an older worker investing in a retirement account might prefer investment 2. Generally, high returns are associated with higher risk. So it all depends upon the risk-seeking attitudes which we have discussed earlier. Let us now talk about decision tree analysis. The decision tree shows how to make decisions between alternate capital strategies. We represent them as decision nodes. When the environment contains uncertain elements, represented as chance nodes, and a decision or event that is state of nature leads to various outcomes. Let us elaborate decision tree analysis with an example, because in reality, whenever you take a decision, there will be sequence of events will be there. That's why in decision tree analysis, we call them as first, what kind of decision you are taking. Second, what kind of decision nodes can be there. For example, if you wanted to take a decision whether to build a plant or upgrade a plant, you have two decision nodes. Number one node is building a plant is one decision node. Our other decision node is upgrading the plant. Let us assume you take the path of building a new plant. You have chances of having strong demand and weak demand. Similarly, upgrading the plant also, there are chances that you may have strong demand and weak demand. So if you see what we are doing, first is decision to be made. Second is the kind of decision nodes, means build a plant or upgrade a plant. And then each decision node is having chance node, means strong demand and weak demand, both in case of the decision node of building new plant and upgrading the existing plant. The same analysis we try to depict here in a pictorial form. The decision to be made is build or upgrade plant. Decision nodes, build new plant where you invest 120 million out of your pocket, or upgrade plant where you invest $50 million out of your pocket. The chance nodes are there can be a situation of strong demand where $200 million worth of money can be generated. This is what the revenue you are getting, and for that there is 60% possibility, and there is a $90 million money can be generated or revenue can be generated in a situation, in a state of nature called weak demand, for which 40% possibility is there. So this is based on subject matter experts' opinion, we got this probability statistics. So if you see the decision tree, okay, so decision node building new plant, you are taking out $120 million out of your pocket. And if you put $120 million out of your pocket, there can be two scenarios. In a strong demand, you may get $200 million. In a weak demand, you may get $90 million. Similarly, for upgrading the plant, you invest $50 million out of your pocket. In a situation where strong demand can prevail, where our experts said 60% is the probability, $120 million is the revenue you can get. And in a situation of weak demand where 40% possibility is there, $60 million can be there. Assume that these are the statistics in our example, we got it from subject matter experts. The net path value, for example, if you see the blue line, so for the decision path called build new plant, in a situation strong demand prevails, $80 million is the net path value. How did you get it? See, $120 million you are actually putting out of your pocket. So it should be minus 120 because you are giving out of your pocket. Whereas $200 million is the revenue you are getting into your pocket. So minus 120 plus 200 is what is 80. So this path, okay, this path net path value is $80 million. Similarly, if you say take the weak demand path, where we have presented the blue line now on weak demand, $120 million you are putting out of your pocket. So minus 120 plus $90 million is what you're actually getting into your pocket. So this is the revenue in a scenario of weak demand. So minus 120 plus 90 minus 30. So the net path value is minus 120 plus 90, which is equal to minus $30 million. Similarly, if you actually take the expected value here, what happens is this net path value of $80 million into 60% plus 40% into minus $30 million is what the entire net path value of the decision node build new plant. So which is actually coming to $36 million. Carefully observe here. In case you build new plant and assuming that the state of nature is strong demand prevails, you are better off. You'll get $80 million. But in case weak demand comes, you're actually losing $30 million. Whether should we go for this decision or not? Let's think about other decision node, which is upgrade plant. Okay, in upgrade plant, okay, you are actually taking minus $50 million out of your pocket. That's why I'm putting minus 50 here. Plus $120 million is the revenue you get in a scenario of strong demand. So for that 60% probability is there. So what is the net path value? Net path value is minus 50 plus 120, which is equal to 70 million here. And for this 60% probability is there. Similarly, minus 50 plus 60, which is equal to 10 million is the net path value of this decision node, which is actually 10 million. So for the net path value of 70 million, there is a possibility of 60% probability is there. For the net path value of 10 million, there is a possibility of 40% is there. So if you apply the expected value formula, the net path value into its probability, so you have to add it both, 70 into 60% plus 10 into 40%. So it's basically coming down to 70 into 60% and 10 into 40%. It actually comes down to $46 million. Okay, so $46 million is what you're actually getting. Okay, now you see the expected monetary value of the decision node build new plant is actually $36 million. So now what we're doing, we're actually the entire decision tree of this is actually squeezed to $36 million. That is expected monetary value, where you have taken the scenario of strong demand and weak demand on building new plant. Similarly, the upgrading plant, you have strong demand and weak demand. You have taken this particular figure and you're actually getting $46. So where should we go? Whether it is $36 million of building new plant, or the expected monetary value, the expected value is $46 million of upgrading plant. Obviously, you will go for the upgrading plant option because you are actually getting the $46 million. So what I'm trying to conclude here is you have to take the route path of upgrading the plant. In this way, you're actually preventing the opportunity of $30 million lost to you in a scenario wherein you build a plant and go for a weak demand situation. So not only that, basically the expected path 46 million is appealing more here. So what did we do so far? We basically have analyzed the decision nodes on their corresponding chance nodes and we have arrived at net path. In real-time life also, any decision you take will have corresponding chance nodes. You have to apply a probability on top of it, and you can bring down the decision nodes expected value here. The catch here is whenever we are tasked to take decisions, first of all, do we first tabulate the various decisions? If we tabulate the decisions, do we tabulate the corresponding chance nodes? Do we understand or at least attempt to apply the probability of each of these chance nodes? So that's the beauty here. So what we're saying, please take decisions. Okay, if you think that the strategic decisions are having different alternatives and each alternative decision nodes are having different chances, please think about what's the probability, what different chance nodes can be there. So it actually brings clarity, structure. This simple mathematics is going to provide the structure to your decision making. Now, is it that we always need to apply mathematics for all decisions? Is the subject matter expert's opinions not required? No, that's not what we are saying. What we are saying is mathematics, especially the basic mathematics, is very, very important. It helps you to provide structure to your thinking. It helps you to put down the decision notes, the chance notes, the net path value, and you actually take the equations called the standard deviation and coefficient of variation to understand the magnitude of the risk and risk per a dollar amount. Okay, it helps you to compare, to analyze various alternate static options. But your analysis, your mathematical analysis is as eligible as the quality of the data. If the data that you get is not quality, or not, it doesn't represent the actual sample population, then your analysis may go wrong. So it's very important that you get the right data, and also you append this mathematical analysis with subjective assessment. Let us take the case study of Coca-Cola and understand what has happened. So at that time, Pepsi and Coca-Cola were actually competing the market like anything, and Pepsi took away some market share of Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola thought, look, let me change my recipe and beat Coco and Pepsi. So Coca-Cola conducted some market tests. It spent around $4 million in coming up with a new recipe, and it has conducted a market tests over 190,000 consumers on the new recipe, and the results proved to be successful. So it spent around $10 million on advertising its new product, and it was quite confident that it can capture some more market share from Pepsi. So they rolled out their new Coke version in May 1985. What has happened? The stunning results. People did not accept the new version of the Coke because there are so many loyalists to the old version of the Coke. So what about the tests then? What about the tests on 190,000 consumers? You know what? The consumers were never told that the new version of the Coke is going to completely replace the old version. So they were just thinking that new version as well as the old version both will be available. So they have given their feedback under that. You see the difference there. When Coke was conducting the test, it has not given this information saying that old Coke will never be available after it rolls out its new Coke. So because of which, whatever data they got as part of their market test, that did not prove successful for its strategy. So the situation is they lost their market share to the Pepsi. So they had to do something different now. So what did they do is they brought back the old Coke under the name of Coca-Cola Classic, and they made the new version of Coke also available. Then they started gaining the market share, even what they lost to Pepsi even before. So what has happened? The 190,000 consumers, did they not provide right data? They did provide right data, but they were not knowing that the old Coke is going to get replaced. So just because that information was not provided to them, the kind of tests data that we are getting did not relate to the actuality when they actually rolled out the Coca-Cola new version. So that is what I'm telling you. So the mathematical assessment, it needs to append or complement, or it needs to travel along with the subjective assessment provided by the subject matter experts as well as the consumers. So the mathematical assessment makes sense when it actually, the sample that you take has adequate information, and that sample represents the entire population's opinion. So that's where the Coca-Cola couldn't do a better job. The $10 million of advertisement and $4 million of venturing into new recipe actually gone waste. So it's a good case study of why and how we have to take right sample and why and how we have to take we have to provide right information to the consumers. So this case study provides right information. Let us do recap on what we have learned. We have learned guidelines for making rational decisions. We have taken an example, compared to investment. Depending upon decision makers' attitude towards risk, the decision can be taken. We have understood decision tree analysis and how to make strategic decisions when it spans across multiple decision nodes and chance nodes. The Coca-Cola case study helps us understand the importance of providing complete information to the test we provide to the consumers, and also the importance of subject matter expertise while taking decisions. Finally, we want to apply basic mathematics while taking decisions under risk, because all along we live with uncertainty. So risk relates to uncertainty. So definitely we have to take decisions today under risk. But in this session, I want to appeal each of you that apply the basic mathematics. Each of us are quite knowledgeable about basic mathematics, but the question is, are we really applying it while taking decisions under risk? Just think about it.